even for 24 hours. Their
I know,
pet.
and yes, exactly. We don't consider the former, injecting toxins into an animal, abuse.
Right.
But there are people out in the
Yeah.
world, and it's fewer and fewer every day, fortunately, who
Mm-hmm.
will see not feeding a dog for a day or several days as abuse. And
Yeah.
that's not to say that a dog that gets put on a chain somewhere and not fed for a month isn't abuse. That's a 100% abuse.
Yeah.
When we fast our dogs, we supervise. We make sure that they can't get into anything that they shouldn't be eating. We make sure that they get lots of clean, fresh water. We know what we're doing. We understand why we're doing it and all of the dynamics involved and what's going on in the body. It's an extremely caring and responsible and conscientious and loving thing to do for your
Yeah.
dog. Absolutely. It's upside down. I mean, everything's
Mm-hmm.
just, the more
It
you
is.
learn, the more you find out that
Exactly.
everything's upside down.
And there's a lot of research that shows the benefits in humans, and I would argue that dogs are even more biologically equipped to fast for longer periods than even humans. And there are
Exactly.
plenty of evidence where it's supporting fasting in humans for good health.
Right, because their food is so dense. They don't
Mm-hmm.
need to eat much. I mean, look at cats. They eat and then they lay around and sleep because the food is so dense that they need to, they need to that energy for
Yeah.
digesting.
Yeah. Um, a lot of people might think watching this, like, I have a meat and potatoes dog. How am I ever going to get my dog to eat fruit? I have a friend whose dog I watch on occasion. The only fruit he has ever eaten is watermelon, and that's taken some time. But there are some dogs that are just they just refuse to eat. Why is that? And what can people do to encourage their dogs to accept fruit as
Yeah,
a meal?
that's a really common complaint because a lot of people, they have their dog on commercial dog food or whatever, and they do offer them fruit now and then, just occasionally. And the dog's going to reject it, of course, because their belly's full of commercial dog food. And even if the dog is hungry, if the dog hasn't eaten all day, they might still not eat fruit. Even if the dog has not eaten for a couple of days, they might not eat fruit because they have generally a conditioned expectation of getting meat. And that's just like, if a wolf is living in rabbit territory and they eat rabbits every day and they have never had the experience of not eating rabbit in a single day, they're going to walk by an apple orchard and not even look at it. They're not going to eat fruit. They're going to think, oh, okay, I'll just get a rabbit tomorrow. There's just none around. Maybe there's a rabbit party going on somewhere. But they're just not going to eat fruit. And it's that conditioned expectation that's causing the problem. So what you need to do is you need to randomize the feeding. And you do that by initially offering these plant foods that are generally appealing to most dogs. And we do have a few little cheat strategies that we can use to get dogs that are really reluctant, really resistant to eating fruit. But I've never seen a dog reject cooked yams and quinoa together. My dog eats it readily. That's what
Mine
she
love
eats
it.
most days. So I would say offer that. If that doesn't work, then you cook the quinoa in a little chicken broth. That might help, and it's disguising the food a little bit, which I'm not in favor of. But it's better than going back to commercial dog food or whatever. You
Yeah.
just have to get them being a little more, expanding their mind, expanding their horizons a bit, dietarily speaking, and sort of replicating the situation in the wild that might occasion a dog to eat secondary foods. And that situation is prey scarcity. You have to get across to the dog, we have a little prey scarcity going on here.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to get used to secondary foods. They're not being stubborn. They're not punishing you.
Yeah.
You just have to replicate their biological norm. And that's what it is, Secondary foods are eaten secondarily only. And we wouldn't have to do that if we had access to wild meats. We don't. I mean, even people who do have access to wild meats their dogs are generally overfed because they're under-exercised, you know, and all domestic dogs are under-exercised. They just can't, you know, a dog in the wild is going to have to run 50 miles to get fed, or 40
Mm-hmm.
miles, or even 10 miles, or whatever. What domestic dog runs 20 miles a day or 10 miles a day or whatever?
Right.
You know, hardly
They don't
any.
have to work for their food.
Right, they don't want to have to work for their food. They don't have to look for their food. So even PMR feeders that can feed wild meats are probably still guilty of overfeeding. So secondary foods can still benefit even if you have access, if you're lucky enough to have access to wild meats.
Feeding these plant meals that are very simple, even if it's just a single ingredient, which I like to do a lot, called mono feeding. You know, just feeding a mono meal of just watermelon, for instance, and they love it. But we are so we've been so, I don't know, brainwashed, and you alluded to this earlier about having to balance our meals. You know, it has to include all of these things, and it needs to be balanced. Can you talk about that a little bit, and
Sure.
why that's not a thing?
So yeah, we'll get to that next time. The balance thing is another huge can of worms
Okay.
we need to open.
All right. Well, just want to thank you, Nora. Thanks for joining me today. And I just want to conclude by saying to our viewers out there that I think this is why, Nora, you devote so much of your time to helping people understand these concepts so that they can take back their power, take it back from those who profit from from our pet's disease, and enjoy the freedom that comes with knowing about the truth about disease. And that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed in learning about natural hygiene and this rotational monofeeding, is just the sheer freedom from all of that noise and nonsense.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kelly. It's been a great chat. Thank you very much.
Okay. You're welcome.
Okay.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.